And welcome back here to the Whiskey Rocks podcast. I'm Joel here with my best friend Chris. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Awesome, man. I'm excited to be talking to you today. We took Halloween off. How was your Halloween?
It was nice. It was cold but uneventful. Not a lot of trick-or-treaters this year.
You've got that adult trick-or-treat thing going on now these days. You don't have like the young kids that you have to get dressed up with and all that. That's got to be kind of nice.
Yeah, and all my neighbors that my kids grew up with, all their kids are grown now too. So like the neighborhood's kind of empty. So
yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, but it is weird. I mean, like obviously Logan's 10, so I had to take him to a Halloween party and socialize with people I had no idea who they were. So, whiskey helped me there. Whiskey certainly helped in that situation. But it's nice to be back behind the mic and, nice to be here talking to the folks down at St Augustine Distillery. So, we're going to be going down to Florida today, folks. These guys, they didn't just want to make whiskey. They wanted to make Florida whiskey, right? Whiskey that tastes like the sunshine on the barrel stage, like old stone streets, like that feeling of summer that refuses to leave. We're going to talk about it, how St. Augustine was an ice plant that became a distillery, how local grain farmers became part of the story, and how Florida climate shapes flavor and why this community feels so deeply connected to the whiskey they're making. So let's get into it. Will and Ric, welcome to Whiskey Rocks.
Thank you, Joel. We're excited to be on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you both. Will, Ric, just real quickly, Will, what's your role out there at the distillery for everyone to know?
So I'm COO here, so kind of whatever's on fire is what's in front of me. Ric makes it easy. He handles everything in the production world, everything from strategy and product development, managing inventory, and even the really fun stuff like paying taxes. So he really owns that side of the business. And for me, it's consumer facing, right? So it's our tour experiences here at the distillery. It's the tastings we offer, the visitor experience, and it's our business out in the market. So how we're doing with the sales team, where we distribute it, et cetera. So it's a nice dynamic. I think Ric and I balance well and know what our lane is and really don't step in the other guy's lane unless we're asked to.
Nice. Ric, is that true?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I like the joke. My title is VP of production, but really what that means is if it lands in the bottle properly, then I did my job.
Okay.
Yep. There's a lot of other things to it, but yeah, we'll nailed it.
Nice. Well, once again, really excited to talk to you guys today. There's a personal connection I've got to the St. Augustine Distillery line. My parents live in Hardyville, South Carolina, and they go down to St. Augustine all the time. And so, yes, I'm wearing my Whiskey Rock shirt because I always have to, but underneath it today, I'm wearing a St. Augustine Distillery t-shirt.
Hey, look at that.
Oh, I love that.
Right. It's got your still on the back and everything. Yeah. So they always like to send me swag and stuff from you guys. So that was how I got introduced to St. Augustine. Was I poured a bottle of your straight bourbon at my parents' house and was like, oh, okay, Florida's showing up here, So we're going to get into all that story for sure. But let's talk about some news. Chris, what do you got going on?
Our barrel pick of Yellowstone finally was released from the state of Ohio. So it's only been like 6 months or so. They've been holding onto it for a while. So I'm happy to have those bottles for distribution. And our high bank pick is going to be ready in like 2 weeks. So all the barrel picks are dropping.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. I can't wait to check those out. We let's see. Last I talked to you guys. Cock of the Walk at Burns Wine and Spirits dropped. We also just got our barrel picks of Belle of Bedford, 13-year rye and 8-year toasted rye. Those just came in last week. Listeners and fans of the show, you'll remember Cyrus from Belle of Bedford was on a few months back, and we got him introduced to the folks at Burns Wine and Spirits and did 3 different barrel picks with him. There was two 13-year-old ryes and then an 8-year-old toasted. So those are all available. Yeah, those are all available at Burns Wine and Spirits. So if you're in Massachusetts, make sure you're checking that out because these guys have some nice flavor to them. That's for sure. Will, Ric, what's happening out at St. Augustine?
Yeah, we're on the other end of a big release for us. We just released the latest edition of our Explorer collection, which is kind of our LTOs that we drop typically once or twice a year. You'll see us release these guys. And it's usually barrels that are pretty hard to get, some stuff that our guys are doing to source kind of globally. The program kind of highlights Rick and his team working across the world to make interesting whiskey. And for us, typically, we're a single mash bill distillery, so it's usually something involving a finishing barrel of some kind. But it was an Amburana finished bourbon that we released at the tail end of October. So that's kind of latest for us. And now we're just gearing up for the holidays. St. Augustine is a huge lighting display called Nights of Lights. They dress this historic town all up in white Christmas lights, and it brings tons of visitors our way. We're grateful for it. So we're getting prepared for that and just getting in holiday mode.
Well, that sounds fun. Rick, anything else you want to add to that?
No. I mean, Amburana was really cool. I mean, we'll probably laugh if we talk about this, but we made this Amburana several years ago, actually, and then it took us forever to get the packaging done. So I'm sure you guys have heard of Amburana over and over and over again. And you're like, God, another one in the world, right? But I think ours is actually pretty exceptional. And what I keep joking about with him is that when we made it, there was like maybe one or two other examples on the market. So what we were doing our research on really did not give us a lot of information on how to kind of land in the middle and do it appropriately. But we actually got pretty lucky because we landed right in the sweet spot. And I'm always going to be biased. I love our spirit, but I think we nailed it.
Nice. Well, we're going to talk about that for sure. Chris and I have always had some opinions on Amburana, so as long as you're
that one was first in barrel, last in bottle. So we learned a lot.
There you go. Yeah, it's one of those things, right? It's one of those things. And we'll talk about it for sure later in the show. But first, let's start off with some stories that you might have missed. First off, in the whiskey world, let's talk about this. This was pretty funny, and actually I got to see it today in person. But Jack Daniel's announced the return of a 3-liter Old No. 7 bottle to the U.S. market for the first time since Prohibition, and the size will be a permanent addition other than a limited release. Chris sent me this story this morning, and then like I said, I just happened to see it. But the company lists a suggested retail price of $79.99, positions the format as a holiday value offering, and plans broad retail availability beginning this month to target gifting and high volume buyers. The move follows a wider industry trend towards larger formats and value-oriented packaging that brands lean on for seasonal sales and to move inventory. Chris, you sent this to me. Let's talk about it. What are you thinking here?
I love it. I love big bottles. we need more like liters. They should have made it bigger and just had a gallon. Just have a gallon of whiskey you could go buy. I know it's Jack Old No. 7, which is is very divisive, and it is what it is. But I just like that the market's going this way. I hope more brands start to do this more.
I mean, the title of the article on Gear Patrol is the Costco era of American whiskey here. Will, Rick, you guys gonna bottle up some 3-liter St. Augustine?
It's funny, we were talking before the show after we read the article, and I'm like, as someone who has a habit of collecting a lot of bottles, I pursue 750s only, and I don't know why I'm weird like that. Like if there's a handle, I don't care if it's a better deal, I'm passing and I'm getting the 750.
Yep.
I won't lie. I'm tempted, because the maximum size now is 3.7 liters, so we can go just under a gallon. So I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just see what that's like.
The latest rollout from the TTB that opened all those just made us all smile. Rick and I also run another distillery here in St. Augustine that does mostly flavored spirits, and we do a line of moonshines there. And Rick made this really killer cola moonshine, like old-fashioned cola infusing roots and all that kind of stuff. And I joked, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to put that in just like the cheapest 2-liter bottle with like the cheapest plastic label, like look like, grocery store, just 2-liter. But they open that up as a size. So you have these options now. So it's fun to see what people are doing with it. 3 liters of Jack. Do I need it in my life? I'm just not sure.
I don't know. I think it was kind of genius. I mean, they dropped it just in time for like Thanksgiving, right? Which is great because it gives you a container big enough for Thanksgiving and still have leftovers for regret. And it's that holiday gift that says I love you, but I also assume you have some friends. There's a lot of things about this that I'm like, I don't know, like I like the idea. $80 for 3 liters is like that's a life decision. You know, I mean, that's something you've really got to tell your future self about, and then like immediately forget it. Because like I saw it today, it's huge. Like I saw this thing in real life today at Burlington Wine and Spirits, and like it's going to take up a lot of shelf space. So you are making a decision with this bottle. You know, like Will, to your point, if you're hunting 750s, like this thing's going to take up a lot of shelf space. It takes up a lot of real estate. That's for sure.
I mean, what a message to your family on Thanksgiving too. You whip that bad boy out, you put it on the table. You're like, we are all here. We're partying.
I'm not sure that's the one Frank Sinatra was pouring from. I'll say that.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, well, we're all here, punk, and then you put that on the table. Maybe we can finally talk to one another. I don't know. It's a bit much. And like I said, when I saw it in person today, I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. But definitely interesting. I love it. It stands out. I hope we see some other things follow it. I don't think I'll be buying the Jack Old No. 7 myself, but I'm sure there are plenty of people that will. That's for sure. In the music world, we had to follow up on this because this is a follow up to when we had Billy Gold on the show a few months back. But essentially, Roddy Bottom of Faith No More has come out and said that we are definitely not getting back together as a group. It was kind of a sad thing to read as fans of the band, and I know that there's some personal connection here. So, Chris, what are you thinking about this?
I'd rather see a band not continue. I mean, it's been 10 years since like their last tour, so it's not surprising. They're all getting older. They all have lives and other interests, as we know, with Billy doing the Rakia. And
yep,
yeah, it is what it is. Like I'd rather see a band like call it quits than just continue and then churn out like music that's not like prime, just not great music. So yeah, I'm okay with it.
Rick, you've done some work with some of these guys, or you've opened for a band. It's open for what's that? Tell everyone about that.
Yeah, so I have a weird history with music, and I thought I was going professional for a while. Thank goodness that didn't work out. That career was cut very short. But I was a drummer for a very long time. And,
another drummer. Oh man, Chris and I are both drummers.
Awesome.
So,
were you a drummer and a singer? Because I was actually able to do that, believe it or not.
I did it once. I did it once at a bar, and I was like 17, 18, and I can't sing, obviously. And everyone was drunk, and everyone's like, "Oh, you did so great!" And I knew I was dog shit. So,
yeah,
and that was hard to do. Like that's a talent, Rick. That's really hard to do.
Nothing makes you appreciate Phil Collins more than that.
I was about to say a little Phil Collins right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty awesome.
I might have said Levon Helm, but
Yeah,
Levon Helm. Love Levon Helm.
But back in my day in Tallahassee in the early 2000s, played a lot of shows, and I actually did a little research because I knew we were talking about Faith No More. I had no idea that Mike Patton did some producing for Melt Banana, which is someone that I opened for back in the day. And believe it or not, right before we got on here, I believe I found a YouTube video not showing me playing, but showing the show that I believe I played at in 2005. So it looked like it was June, which is really cool. So we had a lot of excellent music going on in Tallahassee during that time. So, big scene.
Yeah. Well, it is super cool. I mean, Will, are you a big Faith No More fan? Was this something that hit you in the heart?
Familiar, but it's not on my playlist.
Not on your playlist. Well, like I said, definitely a follow-up to when we had Billy on a few months back. When we talked to him, I mean, obviously he's doing this the Rakia thing, right? He's got his own Rakia Serbian brandy brand that he's working on, and there seemed like he wanted to get back up on stage, but this band has always just been, I mean, they're almost like Jane's Addiction. There's always just been the drama with this band. There's always been something out there that just kind of keeps them from getting back together. So kind of a bummer to read that they're just like, yeah, I think this is it. But honestly, at the end of the day, like you said, Chris, if they don't want to keep playing together, then it probably is best just to call it quits.
Well, now every time I go to the Rock Hall, I can just write them in for nomination because they have the little kiosk where you can nominate a band.
That's right.
Every other time I would either put in Soundgarden or Faith No More, but now that Soundgarden's in, I can just
finally
keep Faith No More.
Wow. No, it's the way to go. It's the way to go. So anyways, that's this week's stories that you might have missed. All right, let's talk about all things St. Augustine now. And we're going to start by pouring some of your Florida straight bourbon. This was the bourbon, like I said, that first got me introduced to St. Augustine. I was at my parents' house, and I needed a drink. As anyone who knows my parents knows why. But I went to my dad's cabinet, and I saw this there, and I was like, oh, should try that out. Tried it, loved it from the very first sip. It had this just nice, like cinnamon red hot type note to it that I just really enjoyed. And it just stuck with me. And it was funny because I was telling Chris this week or last week, whenever the samples came in, and I was like, okay, yeah, I remember liking it back then, and I still like it. Thank God my memory isn't completely shot yet. So that's a good thing. So we're gonna start there, but let's also start with where you guys began, right? Let's give everyone that's listening maybe a little bit of a history lesson, because obviously there's a lot of history that goes into your brand. It goes into the St. Augustine story. So let's start at the very beginning. What kind of brought the St. Augustine Distillery to light?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one, Rick. So, for us, the story starts way before our interest or our founders' interest in whiskey and craft distilling. It really starts with our facility, which is over 100 years old. St. Augustine's a super old town that not a lot of folks in the U.S. are really aware of. It was the first city in the United States. It was built in 1565 by the Spanish. So we've got this unique heritage, Spanish colonial architecture throughout the city. And then it had this kind of effect from the Gilded Age, as Henry Flagler was working his way down the East Coast, connecting railroads all the way down to South Florida. St. Augustine was like his first shot at making kind of a vacation hub. It became kind of a retreat for folks in the Northeast. So he built what is now known as Flagler College, this giant high-end hotel, one of the first buildings in the country wired with electricity. And there's all these other influences. When you guys come and visit, you can see it all. But where we operate was originally built as a tiny little power plant. It was a coal-fired power plant that provided power to the small amount of residents that lived in St. Augustine. And after just a few years into operation, it was converted into an ice manufacturing facility. And this was really pushed and pioneered by Henry Flagler, with the idea being there's incredible shrimp and seafood in St. Augustine. If I could manufacture ice like existed elsewhere in the country, I could bring this back up on my railroad to the Northeast, and thus became the ice plant.
Yep.
So anybody that's grown up here, lived here, kind of knows this as the old ice plant. And in 2010 or so, our founder, Phil McDaniel, and his business partner, Mike Diaz, started realizing, there was potential for craft distilling in Florida. They're seeing it happen across the country, spent a lot of time visiting, not just your, heritage distilleries to understand bourbon and whiskey, but visiting folks in the Pacific Northwest and New York, pockets of the country that had craft distilling booms already started occurring, and said, maybe there's an idea to make bourbon in Florida. And that's kind of where it began for us. Rick, do you want to maybe take the story from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So at that time, they began the work of renovating the building and turning it back into manufacturing. And they kind of had this crazy idea, like, distillation could work in here. So they set to work. I think they met Dave Pickerel in Portland in, was it 2011 at the API? Yeah. And that was like a huge turning point for the company, right? Like, these guys come from marketing, they come from accounting. They did not know how to make whiskey, but they knew it had a lot of potential. But, one of the smartest things you can do when you don't know something is find the person who does. And Dave Pickerel, of course, the Johnny Appleseed of the business. So he said, you have an interesting story here. You have potential. You have a unique aging climate. Let's do this. So we set out to make Florida bourbon for the first time. So we worked, with Vendome. We got the stills in. He actually helped source our original head distiller, a guy named Brendan Wheatley, that was working with Jermaine Robin, which was really cool. So he helped us out a lot there, and just kind of set us on the right path. And one of the cool stories about what we do here, so we make vodka, gin, rum, and bourbon, and we kind of hang our hat on the bourbon part of it. But early on, we were developing, things that you needed to have before bourbon could come out while it was aging. And I'm excited to say, as of today, the gin recipe that they came up with back then is the same thing. That's one of the things that we've never tinkered with in this building. So some of that history is like still present to today, even though we constantly innovate.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I mean, one of the things that stands out, I mean, obviously is the history of St. Augustine and the history of the architecture and of where you guys are creating this. One of the things I've noticed a lot about your brand vibe, and I want you guys to kind of talk about this a little bit, is you really show yourself off as Florida farm to bottle craft whiskey, right? So you're really what I'm noticing about your themes and your brand. Once again, I'm a marketing person, so I always look for this stuff. Is like local agriculture, fresh Florida grains, sustainability, community driven whiskey. Those are like the themes that I see from you guys. How important is that community aspect? Because it seems like that drives a lot of what you're doing out there.
I think it's everything. I mean, our company wouldn't be off the ground without community support. Our investment came from 20 local families. Large part was kind of the group of friends of our owners, right? And Rick mentioned earlier, neither of our owners come from a whiskey making background. One of my favorite sayings or things to tell folks on a tour is, thank God they didn't try to learn it, and they instead worked with folks who knew how to do it. But they had been here for a long time, and both of them, had businesses earlier in their lives, and were really involved in making their communities a better place to live, better place to live, and better place to work. And our founder Phil McDaniel here in St. Augustine was really involved in arts and culture, and was fortunate to sell his first business early on in his life, kind of semi-retire in St. Augustine, raise his kids here. But he's a guy that never stops. And for him, if he wasn't involved, in a business, it was being involved in the community. So he helped found the Cultural Council here in St. Augustine was a big reason what we now call the St. Augustine Amphitheater was converted into what it is. So, for us, the community aspect didn't really begin just with the distillery. It began 15, 20 years before, but those relationships and that community mindset are what made the distillery a possibility. And we've never lost sight of that. We try to find ways that this company has a positive impact on our city and our community.
That's awesome. That's great. So talk to us about that local grain piece, because that also kind of relates to the community. So what does farm to bottle mean to you that maybe people misunderstand?
Rick, me or you?
Oh, well, I'll take it. So I think what people maybe misunderstand about it is that they think that means that we have a farm right out back of the building, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
And that's almost never the case, especially not in St. Johns County in Florida, which is very hard to find land in to begin with. And by the way, one of the cardinal directions you point, there's the ocean right there. So land is very tight here. What it does mean is that we have a commitment to sourcing grain as close to the distillery as we possibly can when we can. So if you know anything about the state of Florida, it's hot as shit. And it's hot as shit most of the year. So, if you know anything about growing grains, it's pretty difficult to grow certain grains during, a hot climate and during a hot part of the year. So we source local grains as much as we possibly can when we can from this area. And that means that we expand beyond that at certain times. But, our commitment to the state of Florida is that we want you to taste who we are in every drop that we produce. But things like malted barley, you really can't grow malted barley in the state of Florida. We've never been able to source malted barley from the state of Florida. Now, of course we can get those things from the state. There are certain times a year where they're a little less desirable, and we'll have to go outside of the state to get that stuff. But, we're showing off what we can do as much as possible.
Yeah. And that's, we've talked to some other folks that, obviously barley is great, grows a lot better in wet climates, like cold, wet climates. Florida doesn't quite have that. That's for sure. Let's talk about your, that is something that we should mention. Terroir is a big thing being spoken about in the whiskey world today. How does that affect you guys? You've got this heat of Florida that obviously affects the aging process, but I know you guys aren't just saying it doesn't age things just faster. You're not trying to rush out whiskey, but how exactly. How would you we did the air quotes for those listening on the podcast, but how would you explain that to people? Like how are you using the climate to your advantage, but also how does it show up as a disadvantage sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always talk about the effects of impact versus interaction. So you get this extraction from the barrel, and that comes based on the heat, right? So you put the whiskey inside the barrel, it's new make, it's clear when it's going in. In our environment here, within a couple of months, that is going to be the same color as mature whiskey in a lot of other places. And we have a nice little example in our museum here that shows just how fast that takes that extraction from the barrel. Now, the interaction happens at the same time as literally everyone else. So, you get those oxidizing effects, you get acid conversions, you get all this fun stuff that happens in the barrel, happens in the wood, but you cannot speed that process up. So just like everyone else in the world, I use Scotland as an example a lot. There's a reason why you go and you pull a Scotch whiskey and you see the average age is about 12 years old. That's because they have high humidity, very low temperature. So that impact is happening so slowly that it takes about 12 years for it to turn into a complex whiskey. We have almost the exact opposite problem here. So what we're doing is we're trying to manage tannins. We're trying to manage too much going into the spirit too quickly, which is why we find that our perfect aging is usually around 5 to 7 years. And I know if you talk to somebody in Kentucky, they're like 7's the beginning. It's really the gold spot. Keep going up from there. Right. Not for us. And our promise to our consumers is that we're going to make the best whiskey we possibly can, regardless of the number that it says on the label.
Yeah. How does the excuse me, how does the humidity affect your angel share? Are you finding that as your whiskey ages that the angel share is more alcohol because of the humidity or more of the water coming out?
We get a little bit of both. Yeah, we get a little bit of both. I'd say on average we are proof negative, but every now and again we'll pull barrels that are proof positive, and particularly the ones that are aging here in the facility at the distillery, those will go way up in proof.
We get a little more airflow here in the facilities. We have both ends of the building open through tours all day. There's this nice kind of wind tunnel that rips through, and it kind of has a strong effect on the barrels.
Nice.
No, that's
cool. I've heard, from different distilleries, like Tasmania, for example, it's very humid and their ABV goes down, so proof negative. And I like, I like barrel strength whiskey. I have a Dickel that's Mellow Moonlight. I love it because it's 79.5% spirit distilled from grain. They can't call it whiskey, but it's 15 years old barrel strength, used to be whiskey. And that's so fascinating to me that you can have spirits do that.
It's also the cool side of folks who are doing low barrel entry proof and stuff, because economically it's not the best decision. There's a reason so many folks enter at 125, right. But it just speaks to the care and the curation even more, at least in our eyes. So it's an interesting journey. But one thing we do face here, like anybody else making whiskey in a warm climate, is a dramatic increase in evaporative loss. We were given the approval, opportunity, benefit, wherever you want to say, in 2021, finally removed restrictions on how many bottles we could sell to a person direct in the facility. Before that, we were capped at 6 per label per year. So if you guys love that Florida straight, we can only sell you 6 bottles per year. So it opened up direct single barrel picks for us, which is super cool. So we could work with companies, individuals, folks could come in, taste through barrels, make a selection. We can bottle it all here, and they can buy it here at the distillery from us, which is great. I had a guy come in right after that happened, and he said, "Man, I just had my first son. I want to lay down a barrel, and when he turns 21, we're going to empty it, and we're going to drink it together." And I'm like, "Man, I love it. That barrel will be empty." So let's talk about something else.
Let's make another plan there, son. Yeah, that's gonna be tough. You guys had to probably do a lot of experimentation at the beginning, right? Because this was all new to Florida, right? Like doing this bourbon. So what were some of those fun experiments that you did? Do you still have barrel one laying around? Is there anything left in barrel one? Take us through some of that experimentation.
So we got pretty close to barrel one, not quite one. Rick, I'll tell a little bit and then you can maybe jump in. But I would say we're still experimenting. I mean, that's the thing about whiskey. We're a 12-year-old distillery at this point. Yep. So how many full maturity batches have we released? So that's my favorite part about this industry, is just you make a small change and it's several years before you know if it was good or bad, and you adjust based on that. But I think the best example is our first batch of whiskey. Our first batch of whiskey we called double cask bourbon. And the story behind that is when we got started, the advice everyone in the industry gave a small craft distillery was smaller barrels means you can sell your whiskey faster. So we started with 25-gallon barrels, and by about 16 months, it was clear it was getting too much influence from the oak. It hadn't matured. It still had that kind of new make, kind of green note to it, but heavy tannins, heavy oak. So that batch was transported into once-used 53s to reach maturity and kind of save the batch in a way. So that was the immediate, holy cow, Florida's different. You can't listen to everybody. You got to kind of make your own way. And, these days, Rick and his team are super selective about wood. It maybe is the biggest differentiating factor between us and other distilleries, just how relentless these guys are on not only, who the cooperage is, but where the wood's coming from, how it was dried, the format of the barrels we're using. But that's just a great example. I mean, that was whiskey that we actually took to market. It's still great whiskey. I like, going back and trying it, seeing how different it is, especially knowing the mash bill didn't really change. It's just processes and aging techniques. But that's a great one. I mean, it was just, you got to learn, you got to change, and what works in other states or other climates is not going to necessarily work here.
So what was the moment where you tried a barrel and thought, okay, This is different. This is us. Because you gotta have a flagship, right? So like, what was that moment like where you were like, this is us. This is what we're gonna hang our hat on. What was that? What and when was that moment?
We've had that moment a lot, I think.
Yeah.
many times over, unfortunately. But one of the cool things, and I talk about this all the time, we got so fortunate with our owners in so many ways that they were willing to listen to other people. And a guy named Jake Norris was actually the person that originally developed our mash bill for us, and we love Jake for so many reasons. But one of the things that he kind of latched onto early that I kind of keep repeating is, you guys have this high humidity environment, right? So let's mimic a couple of things that we see in other high humidity environments. And again, I'm going to bring up Scotland. He looked at it and he said, maybe a high malt mash bill, especially 12 years ago. This was kind of weird for a bourbon, particularly one that was being made outside of Kentucky. So he said maybe a high malt mash bill might actually age really well in this. And I think it was very early on in the process, particularly after we went to all 53s, we got our distillation technique down. We really started figuring out this blending piece that we looked at it and we said that backbone of chocolate and nuttiness is everything, especially when you do it on a double pot distillation. You have this huge mouthfeel. There's this through line. That's what we're going to hang our hat on. And then, of course, when I came on, I started looking at the barrels and I said, well, we can create a bigger spice rack and we can add to that. But that's always going to be the basis of what we do. So when we've made changes over the years, we've always looked and said, there's no compromise on that part of it. We really want that malt to show through. And when we figured out that was kind of the tone of all of the bourbon the first time, that's where we really kind of leaned into who we are.
Nice. Well, let's talk about your. Oh, go ahead.
Well, for our listeners, what is the mash bill again?
I was going to ask.
60, 18, 22. So 60% corn, 18% wheat, 22% malted barley.
Wow, that is a lot of barley content. That's it.
It really is.
I like that. And I have moved on from the Florida straight over to the Saint, but before we do so, so this is 88 proof of that 68. What'd you say? What was it? 60, 18, 22 mash bill at 88 proof, and the MSRP is what, guys, on this?
You'll find it around $50.
Around $50, right? So nice MSRP on that. I've moved over to the Saints. Let's talk about what that is, because I know it's a little bit of a special bottle for you guys. So what's the difference? I mean, I've done the research. I know what the difference is, but for our listeners, what's the difference of the Saint?
So I'll take that one a step back and kind of the product that makes it able to exist. So we understand that a lot of folks who come into our distillery are here on vacation or traveling from elsewhere in the state. So we're kind of up against like a convenience factor. And what I mean by that is we want to give them an easy way to make a delicious cocktail at their hotel room, at their campground, wherever they're going back to. So when you tour our distillery, like Rick said, we do also do clear spirits with vodka, gin, and rum. Our most frequented tour tends to be centered around cocktails. And in the early days of the company, it was like, oh, we made these super curated cocktails that we're super into. Here's a grocery list. By the way, there's no grocery store in downtown, and here's the liquor. Go have fun. So we're like, well, can we find a way to make like a good quality cocktail easy? And we were able to develop a line of super high quality mixers, juice-based mixers, no preservatives, things that you can do to make a really close to craft quality cocktail in like 2 seconds. And the challenge for us is always the ultimate whiskey cocktail, right? What do you do with the old fashioned? How do you make a good old fashioned easy for folks who aren't going to have the tools, aren't going to be able to make it? And we ended up doing a barrel aged old fashioned mix. So it's a mix of 2 types of bitters, gentian root, cinchona bark, Florida cane sugar, orange peel, water, and it's kind of cooked down and aged in a bourbon barrel for about 8 weeks. And when we were early on in the company's history, we're selling, 2-3 year old whiskey. We're very young, very new distillery, but we're fortunate we got linked up with a lot of the major retailers here in the state of Florida. And the folks actually at our local Total Wine and our distributors said, hey, bourbon's taken off. We can't keep any of the allocated stuff in stock. If you guys could make something in a nice package that was interesting, we really think there's a market for it. So we kind of got to work. And what's funny for it, we originally finished some of our least favorite barrels, just being honest, in these old fashioned barrels. And our distillers put it in front of our owner and he said, who made that? And they proudly said, we did. And so what the Saint is bourbon finished in those old fashioned casks. So it's an old fashioned finished bourbon, if you will. It's done on 5-barrel batches. Rick and his team are looking for really specific flavors out of those barrels. And we actually only finished 4 of them. One of them stays unfinished to kind of manage the sweetness that could come through. But it's just a great flavor profile. You get a lot of baking spice, elements of the cocktail without being overwhelming. And it's something that still to this day, we don't see really anything comparable. It's a really unique product.
It is a unique product, and it's delicious.
It is.
Thank you.
I mean, it's really freaking good. I mean, it is a cocktail in a glass, but without it being overly sweet and overly cocktail-like, if that makes sense.
Still stands up. It's still cast strength whiskey, usually anywhere from 109 to 115 proof, and it's solid.
It is solid. Chris?
As someone who doesn't care for old fashions, this is my go-to old fashioned now.
There we go.
I'll just pour the Saint and call it my old fashioned.
That's a big seal of approval. Yeah. That's a big for Chris. That's a big endorsement right there.
It's really delicious.
Pour that over an ice cube. There's your old fashioned, right? But it doesn't. I mean, once again, it doesn't have like all of those sweet, sugary old fashioned notes. You just get a little bit of that. I don't know, just a little bit of those bitters in there, maybe a little bit, and it's really good. That's a really tasty product. What's the MSRP on that one?
That one's anywhere from 180 to 200, depending on where you see it in the market.
Yep. All right. So you're jumping up there, folks, but you've got a cast strength product, right? And it's unique. It's not like anything you're going to find anywhere else.
It's really, really good.
It's tasty. That's a really tasty product. Like I said, I really been enjoying that one for sure. So let's go back to your process a little bit more. Talk to us about those grain relationships a little bit more, because you obviously very committed to the Florida economy and community. So who are the farmers, and kind of what's the handshake story behind the whiskey?
Yeah, so we've actually had a couple of different farmers that we've used over the years. Right before we went over to rum this year, we were actually pulling from Illinois, it was a co-op. So it actually came from a couple of different places. But when we work in the state of Florida, we tend to find co-ops as well. So they'll pull from North Florida. Sometimes we get them from Central Florida. Particularly wheat comes from Central Florida as well, which is really good. But all of our malted barley comes from Minnesota, which is really cool. So we get that kind of Northern Alliance going on there. But yeah, those relationships are extremely important. I mean, we found that when you can trust your grain supplier, that it takes a lot of the headache out. And one of the big things for us, we never ever want to find too much moisture in the grain. We never want to find any molding. We never want to find anything like that. So being able to trust a farmer that brings a bag in that actually has what you want in it is huge.
Yeah, I could imagine. I'm sure you've seen some crazy things.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than sending grain back, and everyone has to do it, but then it's like your whole process gets delayed. And it's one thing if you're a large brand that's getting 5 more truckloads that day, but if this is your truckload for this week of making whiskey and you got to send it back, it really throws things off.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine that's tough. And speaking of tough, you guys have seen people taste your whiskey for the first time on site. So what's a reaction that's stuck with you, either good or bad?
Well, the good ones stick with us.
Well, I hope so. That's it, right? That's it.
We have the interesting thing of being a lot of people's first neat tasting, or some people's first bourbon tasting. We're many folks' first distillery visit. But I think nothing makes us happier than someone who knows the industry and understands, different brands and different flavor profiles, recognizing what makes us unique. Rick and his team pride themselves in making a product that represents the state of Florida. And that's not just grain, it's aging conditions. It's doing something unique and different. And, we know that high malt content gives us a very kind of rich, leather, chocolate forward flavor. And when I have someone in the industry who tastes that and respects it and appreciates it, that's what really gets us going.
That's awesome.
I'll give you an example of a good one and a bad one for me. So I'd say probably the best days, in my world, are where we're able to convert non-drinkers into drinkers. So we get a lot of people that come in and they say things like, "Ugh, I had gin when I was in college. I don't drink that shit." And we're like, "Okay, well, would you give us a shot?" And they're like, "I guess," and they present them this awesome cocktail. They love it. They try the gin neat, and we change their mind. And that happens all the time. And that really makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're doing something. But on the bad side, little anecdote. So last year we did a Distiller Select series. where we actually had 3 of the distillers here go out, and it was basically like one of those like shopping cart in the grocery game shows where it's like,
oh,
all right,
fun supermarket sweep. Yeah,
supermarket
yeah.
sweep. Yes, yeah. You fire the pistol, and we all went running towards the barrels, that we wanted to pick, like claiming one, like this is mine, whatever. And we each got to pick a single barrel that we thought emphasized our style, and it was 3 of the people who are really the tastemakers here. The ones that sit down, we blend together, we choose products, like we all do tastings. And we ended up in very different places. Our head distiller Daniel, he picked the oldest barrel. Our distiller Zach, he picked one of the youngest ones, and then I kind of landed in the middle somewhere. And when this series came out, we had different color labels. There was a blue, a red, and a green. I was the green one, and there was a lady who was tasting at the bar on the day it came out, and I can overhear her talking to someone. She says, "Oh, I saw your picture over there." And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And she said, "Which color are you?" And I said, "Green." And she like turned to her husband. And she's like, "I hated that one." And in my mind, I'm like, "Thanks for the honest feedback."
yeah.
But the point is, I'm not going to make everybody happy, and I know that, but the thing is, like, tell me, I can take it. I want to find out who my biggest fans are, and I want to find out who my biggest haters are, and I want to convert those haters,
Yeah. Well, like we've always said on this show, I mean, it's part of the reason we talk about music and whiskey. It's all subjective. You know what I mean? Like it's all subjective. And that lady, she might not have liked that green label, but I'm sure there was someone else who did, right? And so that's how it goes. I mean, you liked the green label. You put you put it in a bottle, right? So it's like it's so subjective, and that's one of the things that we always talk about for sure. Let's go to music a little bit because I just brought that up. So if Florida whiskey, if St. Augustine Distillery was a band, what band are we talking about here, and why?
Oh boy.
Oh, that's so tough to say. I feel like we're gonna let Phil down if we said the wrong thing.
So Will and I are very different in our music tastes. I should say that right off the bat. So I think I would pick one thing, and he would pick something completely different. Well, you can see right behind me. We've got JJ Gray on the wall. We actually did a bourbon for him, which is really cool. So let's give a shout out to JJ Gray. We love him.
Yeah,
JJ
that's
Gray.
Florida soul. I like that. And we've got copper and brass in our blood, right? The stills are copper, and a lot of jazz fans, a lot of New Orleans brass fans in the facility. We're proud to be part of the Fort Mosaic Jazz and Blues Fest that happens here every year.
Nice.
And so that's in there as well.
Okay, I like that. I mean, you guys are very classy. It's one of the things that my mom always says about St. Augustine's Distillery. She's like, I like that place. It's really classy in there.
Well, they haven't met Rick and myself, clearly.
Well, clearly. But like, she loves the architecture. She loves all the brass and she's like, it's a really just nice place. I'm like, well, like, take me down there, Mom. Next time I'm in Hardyville, like, we always just sit around your house. Like, come on, let's take the drive. Like, so let's go down to St. Augustine.
Well, all right. Happy to take you to a show at the amphitheater. I know you guys love music, and it's right down the road. So we sponsor a lot of things up there. Whoever you want to see, you let us know.
That sounds fantastic. Do you guys ever have bands at the distillery?
We typically do actually once a year. We do an annual holiday event with actually Florida Power and Light, who's kind of the state's main power company, and they used to own our facility. So we have this really unique shared history. And once a year we do an event with them. It's almost just a community forward event. It's totally free. Folks come in, we do a tree lighting ceremony. It just celebrates the shared heritage that we have. That's actually coming up on November 14th, next Friday. And that's one of the few times we do have bands here. Outside of that, in September, there's a great festival and really citywide kind of event called Sing Out Loud, where it promotes singer-songwriters throughout the city. And then it kind of culminates with this main really festival-style 2-day show at Francis Field here in St. Augustine. But we've had, for the last few years, we missed it this year, but the last few years before, we'd get incredible acoustic-only singer-songwriters that would do like a seated show here in the facility, which is awesome.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Cool. It's actually got good acoustics. It's surprising.
I was just going to ask about literally, you took it out of my mouth. Like, I was going to ask about the acoustics.
We're always very surprised. Rick and I are always, there's a ton of work leading up to these things. And when no one has the direct position for it, Rick and I usually have to pick up the slack. So it's an all hands on deck affair, particularly for that holiday event. The whole team is busting their ass. And when it's all said and done and running, you kind of sit back and say, hey, this is working. And we always have that moment of like, man, this band sounds pretty good right now. We should do this more often.
Nice. All right, I switched to your port finished. So why don't we take people through that real quick? 102 proof. Obviously, Florida. It's your Florida straight bourbon finished in port casks. So, what kind of inspired this? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to have a neighbor that's literally right across the street, basically from us, about a block and a half, called San Sebastian Winery, and they make a port there. And not only did some of the advice on how to kind of run this tour come from the people at San Sebastian Winery, but they had a product that made sense for us. So we've been exchanging barrels with them for years and years and years. We'll give them freshly emptied bourbon barrels. They'll fill them with their port. They'll age the port in it, and then they'll send it right back to us, and we age some more bourbon in it, and the cycle goes on and on and on forever. And we think it infuses this really cool, light berry flavor that is really beautiful. But most importantly, it just highlights that community that we were talking about at the beginning. I mean, they're literally right there. Make sure that you're helping your neighbors out and you're doing as much as you can to do things with them.
That's cool. I love that. I love that piece of it for sure. So how long are you finishing it in these port barrels for?
So it ranges quite a bit. It depends on how, fresh the barrels are, how much the impact of the port of that year is. Yeah. I'd say the shortest we've ever done the secondary finish was probably 5 months. I'd say the longest we've ever done it for was about 1.5 years. I don't like to put a statement on there on that one because it changes, like we were talking about earlier. You want to pull it when it's right, not when it hits a certain number. So,
yep. No, it's important. A lot of quality control. It must be a really bad job for you, Rick. Just going in there and making sure it's hitting the quality. Port finish bourbons are one of those things that they have to be done right. I've had some that have been, sulfur. I've had some that are overly sweet, for sure, as well. You do pick up, like you said, a light berry on this. But it still has that bourbon backbone. It's still giving me that nice Florida straight bourbon backbone, which, the more and more I keep tasting, the more and more I just go back. And it's funny because with your Amberana and your port, I always go back to the Florida just to kind of like reset my palate a little bit, just to make sure, because it's so important to me that a finished product still has the backbone, right? And all of them so far have really all had that backbone. I did the Amberana when it first came. I'm going to do it see if it still keeps the backbone. I'll keep you honest. I promise. Yeah. All right. But the port finish is really good. Chris, what are you thinking?
I like the port. I always add like 1 or 2 drops of water, so I added a drop of water to it, and the mouthfeel is really, really incredible. And it just rounded out just a little bit, and it's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what water can do sometimes.
Right? And sometimes the water just changes everything. Like the nose will be way stronger or way more subtle, or same thing with the flavor. And this I really enjoy it with 1 drop of water. It was really, really great.
That's awesome. So what would you say is like one of the least romantic? I mean, everyone always talks about like distilleries, and there's this like just this love and this passion for the spirit and all these great like. But what's the least romantic thing?
Oh man, how much time you got? Yeah, so there's a lot of it that's really unromantic. I'll be honest. It's at its core, it's a manufacturing job. And not that manufacturing isn't cool. It's just it's hard.
It's labor. And it's hard labor. Right.
There's a grind. There's a day in, day out. And one of the things that I joke about all the time when you make low wines, in your first distillation, you're stripping, and what you end up with is a low wine, a low proof spirit at that point. Shit's disgusting. I mean, when you go home smelling like low wine because you had to move a hose from one place to another, the first thing you hear from your partner is get in the fucking shower. Like that's, it's like there is no world in which you can go out after messing around with low wines and just be in public. So that's one thing that's kind of gross. Another thing is, of course, is the stillage, dealing with slop, the grains, all of those things. I mean, after it's fermented, I mean, you got this really funky, like acidic thing going on. Neither of those things are very romantic. And then, of course, just kind of the grind, like staying consistent. I mean, I think you guys probably more than anyone understand that there is an art connection to doing this. And in your heart, you know that you're doing manufacturing, but you really want to be artistic with it. And you want to constantly change, and you want to constantly innovate. People do not want you to change their bourbon that they love year after year. When they buy Florida Straight, they want Florida Straight. you know, and here I am over here going, well, I can tweak it 5%. I can make it 10% better here.
That's
whatever.
the musician in you, Rick. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And all I'm hearing from the market is keep it simple, stupid. You know,
play
like,
the hits.
Play the hits.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's tricky. We have talked about that on the show before. Like there is such a correlation to like bands that decide to do something different, and it's like it felt right to the band, but wow, the people didn't like it. Yeah, you know, like the fans didn't like it, and it's tough because to the distillery or the band, it made sense at the time, right? And you're always wanting to innovate and be different, but you also, you know, got to keep the lights on. So
I think the other part of it is just the challenge that any brand faces in the market. You know, we have this unique benefit of getting a lot of visitors in our facility, but that itself has risk. You're kind of tied to tourism, and as it ebbs and flows, you know, you feel it. But beyond that, you know, we have felt for over a decade what it means to be a small brand competing on the shelf. And oh, by the way, over those last 10 plus years, that shelf has gotten a lot bigger and there's a lot more brands. Yeah. And, you know, even with our own distributor network, and we're super grateful for the love and support we get. Couldn't do it without them, but they carry large brands that we are directly competing with. And there's nothing that hurts you more than going into a bar that you had a great menu placement and you've been kicked off for something else in your distributor's portfolio. You're like, oh, in the heart, but it's constant, man. And you make relationships and people leave and you must remake. And it's just, we say it's a knife fight in the market. And I think that's the most appropriate way to put it. And, you know, we're just doing what we can to get liquid to lips and have people get the opportunity to try something unique coming out of Florida.
Yeah. Let's talk about that distribution real quick. Where can people go into a store and buy you? And then how else can they get some St. Augustine to the lips?
So brick and mortar, we are distributed throughout Florida and Georgia. And beyond that, we work with retail partners who are able to ship, and they can touch about 42 states currently. So the reach is pretty good. But the challenge is not everyone is used to or willing to buy that way. So, you know, we're seeing things shift. Folks are getting more and more comfortable buying online. We've got basically our entire portfolio available. And, you know, usually there's free shipping offers. So we're seeing things change a little bit. But I think whiskey is a little bit behind wine in that sense. I think a lot of the wine enthusiasts are used to it. You know, that's where you get the best stuff. But we hope to see it change, and folks are used to it from that sense with whiskey as well. We do hope to see ourselves expand with traditional distribution, but we're proud of our logical expansion. We've seen a lot of brands overinvest to be in many, many states, and then if that ultimate, you know, payoff doesn't come through, sometimes those brands don't survive. So we've been very, very slow to expand through traditional distribution. Fortunately, Florida has a strong alcohol market, and for the early years of our company, that was driven by inventory, right? We could only make so much. We could only meet so much demand. And, you know, thanks in large part to Rick and the changes he's made, we've gotten more efficient. We can produce more whiskey. We're finally looking at a future that we can grow beyond just Florida, Georgia, and our e-commerce efforts. But we had to earn that right. And that comes not just with effort, but spending money to put whiskey in a barrel.
No, makes a lot of sense. Well, that's good to know. I mean, once again, folks, you know, if you're in Florida or Georgia, make sure you go to your liquor store, pick them up. But 42 different states. So likely that you can get your hands on some. Where should people go to get their hands on some? St Augustine Distillery.com. Also, I'm sure social media. You guys have a lot going on there.
It'll link through there. But yes, St Augustine Distillery.com. And we do ST for Saint. So it's StAugustineDistillery.com. You'll see a shop experience link that'll take you to our partners who can legally get it to your door.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, legally, right?
Yeah,
that's always the tricky part. That's for sure. Well, let's get into some rapid fire questions before we sign off here. Something I like to do with.
Let's do the Amburana.
Oh yeah, you're right. You know, I poured it, but let's talk about it real quick.
I will say this. So, Joel, you're in agreement. Joel and I aren't Amburana fans,
right?
But there are some Amburanas that are finished whiskeys that I actually enjoy, and this is one of them. It's not clobbering me over my head with Amburana flavors.
No,
the Amburana flavors are there, but it's a nice balance. It's very well done.
So that was a 11-day finish on that one, which we thought was appropriate. Yeah,
see, I love that because it. What happens all the time with these is it's cinnamon toast crunch in a glass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
which sounds like, and my brain thinks like that's awesome, but then when I go to taste it, I'm like, I don't like that. which is so weird because cinnamon and is such a like bourbon flavor.
I know, but there's something about when it's overdone, and so 11 days. Wow, 11 days in that Amberana.
Did you taste it Did you taste it every day?
Every single day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The fear of over finishing drives a lot of our like time in the secondary barrel. I think a cool example is when we first did our toasted finish. We got our toasted barrels from Kelvin Cooperage, working with the owners over there. They're like, hey, we've never done this with a warm climate distillery. You're going to want to taste it like every half hour. And that one ended up being, what was the finish on toasted, Rick? It was also somewhere around 2 weeks.
It was 9 days.
9 days.
Yeah, 9 days on toasted. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're maniacal about not over finishing, and we have had products where we're like, damn, that was better a month ago. We should never do that again. So the Amberana was a great example of like, got to be careful. It's got to be bourbon forward, and that's on the finish. That's in the background, and I think Rick and his team nailed it.
It is, especially like I said, I went back to the Florida Straight before going to the Amberana, and it does still have that backbone. It does. It is there. You are getting a touch of that Amberana, but it's not overly done. It's not clobbering you at all. So really well done. What are the stats on this? This one real quick, guys.
So total 4 year 22 day. Same mash bill that we described earlier.
Yep.
And the proof on this one, 109.8 is what we ended up on that one. That is high strength.
It doesn't drink that hot. It doesn't drink one.
Yeah.
Not at all. So almost 110 proof. Wow.
I'll give you kind of a funny anecdote about that one too. So this was a blend of 6 barrels that we did on this one. And we've currently got 2,800 barrels, I think, out in our storage warehouse.
Wow.
When you walk into that warehouse, the only thing you can smell is those Amburana barrels. It's just like hits you in the face when you walk in. And it's kind of wild.
Well,
it's crazy.
I was down at High Bank about a month ago, and I think they had just one Amberana barrel, but they have like dates on it when they refilled it because they can refill it so many times. And so we tried some straight from the barrel. I'm not sure how long the whiskey was in the barrel, but it was just pure amber, like cask strength pure Amberana. I was just like,
it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that once again, you're just talking a wood. It's not a wine finish. It's not a honey finish. It's a wood that just gives off that much flavor.
Well, think of what wood does to bourbon. I know we think of the emphasis of the secondary barrel, but we kind of forget what the new oak did to begin with.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I just figured it out, Joel. You know what Amberana is? It's peat. It's like the peat. People who don't like peated Scotch. That's what the bourbon who don't like Amberana like. I wonder what a whiskey a bourbon would taste like if it was left in Amberana for like a year. It would be like Octomore. Like it would just be like it would get so strong. It wouldn't probably taste exactly like Amberana. It would just be like so different.
Or King's
County. Or just
King's County could do their peated bourbon.
Challenge.
Yeah, it's like the cinnamon challenge, right? Yeah. Like, could you imagine a peated bourbon in Amberana?
Oh wow,
that could be two different worlds going on there. Anyways, no, really well done. And the MSRP on that one is what?
150.
150.
Yep.
So,
and that one's distillery exclusive as well as our online retailers, so you can still get that online.
But to say that one's still available, new release. So
we're winding down on inventory, but there's still some right now as we're recording.
Well, guys, if you're looking for an Amberana for your shelf and it's not overly done, this is definitely got our seal of approval. It's not completely. It's not going to completely smack you in the face. So that's really well done. Let's do some rapid fire and get out of here because I know we've all got important things to do, and by that I mean I'm going to drink by myself in my basement. But first off, let's start with you, Will. What's the worst whiskey advice you've ever heard?
That you can only drink it neat.
Yep.
To us, the best way is whatever you like. We mentioned the Amberana. I was laughing with Rick. I'm like, you know what I did with that the first night I took it home? I mixed it with like an old school sarsaparilla soda. And the way the roots played with the finishing barrel, it was so good. It was like the best highball of my life. So drink your whiskey however you want. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I like that. This one's for you, Rick. Most Florida thing you've ever seen in the distillery parking lot?
Oh, my God. A bunch of shark's teeth. Somebody spilled a giant bucket of shark's teeth that they collected out in the parking lot at the distillery, and they were everywhere, and the whole team was out there just trying to collect them for days.
It's better than that. They spilled a bucket that they collected, but they were collected from just a random load of gravel we brought in to fill our back lot, which is just gravel. But Florida, you bring in road-based gravel, and it's going to have shark's teeth in it because that's Florida.
I love it. That's so freaking awesome. All right, Will, one word that describes St. Augustine Distillery. You guys particularly. Authentic. I like that. That works for me. Rick, all right. What's the bottle you sneak just for you?
From out that we make?
Yeah, left for you to decide.
I'm gonna go for an aquavit. I know a lot of people don't appreciate that style of spirit, but if I see a good one that has some dill in it, I'm gonna sneak that, and I'm not gonna tell anybody, even though I'm telling the world right now. Yeah, I'm going for an aquavit if I can find a really good one.
Aquavit with dill.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got weird taste, man. I got weird taste.
I also know Rick well enough.
That.
I also know Rick well enough to know a bottle of OGD ain't that far away.
Yeah, that's true.
We love OGD here.
We love OGD. That's for sure. It's definitely one of our favorites. All right. Will, what's the bottle you reach for when the workday wins?
Whatever our latest is, honestly. It's always on the bar, top and home, and that's what I'm going for.
All right. Rick, as someone who's doing a lot of the production here, what's one distillery outside your own that you admire from a distance?
Oh God, so many. I would say recently we've had a lot of interactions with the guys at Four Roses, and we love them. I mean, they've always been so helpful to us, and
that's awesome.
It's really a shining example of how someone can get big but still be authentic and still be themselves, and we love them.
We just talked about them on the last episode. I mean, they're just going through this whole like, what are they? What's going to happen out there at Four Roses, right? Who's going to buy those?
You guys are going to pick it up, right?
Yeah, that is
short on cash.
Breaking news. I'm broke. It's the breaking news. Not going to happen. All right. So, last question that we like to ask every single person. I want you both to answer it. It's the same answer. That's fine. But we'll start with you. What if there was one thing you could change about the whiskey industry, and you had the magic wand to just do it instantly? What would it be, and why?
I wish people wouldn't chase the same 5 brands. I think there's a lot of great whiskey out there from both large and small producers, and I think people get hung up on chasing the same things. And it doesn't mean they're not great whiskey, but there's a lot out there to explore, and it's a uniquely American product. We're so proud to be a producer of this historic spirit, and there's just so much to enjoy and appreciate and learn about. And don't stop with 5 things, and certainly don't buy 5 bottles of the same thing before you got a few more from other folks.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. Rick, you, same question.
I wish there was more room for everyone. I wish that craft distilleries could get into the business easily and really provide their art to the world, and unfortunately it often is kind of a race to the bottom for a lot of people. But, I've met so many amazing distillers out there that can't figure out how to get funding. They can't figure out how to do any of these things, and the world deserves to taste what they can do, So that's really what I wish. And if I may, I'm going to interject a little bit of a shout out here, because I know this is a music podcast, and Will's going to roll his eyes at me. But I do want to give a shout out to some buddies of mine. So back in that Tallahassee music scene many years ago, there was one band that escaped and actually did well, Mayday Parade, and they just hit 20 years of touring and putting out albums. And I just want to say, way to fucking go, guys. And your families are beautiful, and you're doing amazing, and good luck at Warped Tour.
Nice. Oh, Warped Tour. God, that takes me back.
Yeah, they're playing in like 2 weeks in Warped Tour Orlando. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go, but, love them to death.
Warped Tour. Dude, I have had some fun times at the Warped Tour. That's for sure. Damn, just took me back. Well, no, you're right. And, we one of the things we love about our show is spotlighting craft distillers, right? We love spotlighting and highlighting what you guys are doing, because it is so uniquely American, and it is so uniquely what we're all about here, is just making sure that folks understand there's more than 5 brands, and sure, we've had some people from Wild Turkey and Heaven Hill on and whatnot, but like there are so many great things going on. And you guys are a shining example of that, right? So as we start to sign off, I mean, Will, Rick, what are some final words? Where can, once again, people follow you guys and get to know you more and all that?
The absolute best way is take a trip to St. Augustine. There's a lot more here beyond us. We hope you'll spend some time with us for sure. But outside of that, throughout Florida, any of your major retailers are going to have us. Throughout Georgia, you'll find the same thing. And folks who are in certain select group of 42 states, just hop online to StAugustinedistillery.com and you'll find a way to get it to your door. But we hope everyone can take a trip here. I always tell Rick, 10 minutes on our tour floor reminds me what I love about this industry. I did not come from the bev alc industry, and it was so new for me. And I still tell people I've turned a hobby into a profession, and it never got old. And, sometimes we get stuck in the doldrums of day to day. We spend a little too much time working on the computer. But when I get to spend 10 minutes telling people about what we love to do, it just changes everything.
Absolutely. And you hear that, Mom? Mom, you listening? Because don't just send me a goddamn fucking t-shirt. Can we just go down there, for Christ's sake? You go down there all the time and you send me t-shirts. Can we just go? Anyways, all right. Sorry about that. Rick?
Yeah, I mean, basically same answer. Come here, get to know us. And I will say, walk up to the machines, ask me questions. There are no such thing as stupid questions. If it's, what'd you have for lunch today? Like, what's your favorite band? Like, I will talk to you about that stuff all day. But if there's anything that I can do to educate you about whiskey or any spirit, even if it's not our spirit, I'm happy to talk about it. Because when someone leaves here feeling like they're kind of in, and they kind of know what's going on here, that's a win for everybody, So just come down here, meet us, enjoy sunny Florida, and have a good time.
No, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. There are no dumb questions. There's just dumb people that ask questions. And I'm the perfect example of that is I've been asking you questions this entire time. So, that's a perfect example of that. Chris, final words.
Same thing. Go check them out. If you can't get there and check them out, go online, order a bottle. If you're one of the lucky 42 states, really great stuff. I love what you guys are doing. I love the authenticity. And you guys take meticulous care of what you're doing, and I really respect that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Definitely be making sure you're following them along on all their socials. Go to staugustine.com and make sure you're buying a bottle. That wraps us up today with Will and Ric from St Augustine Distillery. I'm going to blame that on the Amberana 109.
That's fair.
All right. But honestly, if you got something out of this, a laugh, a new bottle to try, a new appreciation for Florida humidity, share this episode with somebody. Send it to your uncle who thinks he knows bourbon, your coworker who keeps bringing Fireball to parties, your high school friend who peaked early, your mailman, your fantasy football league group chat. Just put it somewhere weird. We don't care. Just share it. It's how we continue to grow. This was episode 72, and we wouldn't be doing that if it weren't for you guys. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and now for those that have even said we want to stare at you guys for over an hour, you can follow us on YouTube at the Whiskey Rocks Podcast. We'll see you next pour. Whiskey Rocks. Sip hard.